It's a very interesting time to be a Vancouver Canucks fan, and I wanted to use this video as an opportunity to just kind of go over a few housekeeping things. Don't get me wrong, there hasn't been any updates, no big rumors, no things coming out in the media, whatever. This is just a video about whatever, because I don't know if you noticed, but the NHL trade deadline was a week ago. So that means that a lot of the stories, a lot of the hype, a lot of the rumors and everything, they've kind of died down a little bit. Sure, there are the odd signing rumors here and there, but a lot of the NHL news cycle has dried up tremendously from 2 weeks ago up until now, which I'm not going to complain about, that's just kind of how it is. But because there's a little bit of a lull period, because right now we're still in the regular season, the Canucks still have some games to play, I wanted to go out there and just ask the question, what now for Vancouver? Because when you take a look at the NHL standings, you see the entire Western Conference, the Vancouver Canucks have a 1-point lead on the Winnipeg Jets. Now, the Jets do have one game in hand, so they are technically above Vancouver in terms of points percentage. But if you go by only Pacific Division teams, that's where things get a little bit easier for Vancouver because they have an 8-point lead over the Edmonton Oilers. And sure, the Oilers have 3 games in hand for some reason. I don't know why they only have 66 games played at this point of the year, but the Oilers have been making up ground after their terrible start at the beginning of the year, and now they're right in there as the second overall team in the Pacific Division with a 5-point lead on LA. Points percentage still goes to Vancouver, just in case you're wondering, and when it comes to the Canucks and their potential to hold on to that spot, this is what JPAT went out there and tweeted out. If the Vancouver Canucks manage to play 500 hockey over the final 13 games, they'll finish with 107 points. The Oilers would need to go 10-5-1 to get to 107. The Canucks have a sizable edge in regulation and overtime wins, plus they won the season series. So for all intents and purposes, I guess you could say that Vancouver is going to be a playoff team. I mean, their chances at this point are at 99, if not 100%, and all that I'm wondering here is, okay, what now? If you had told Canucks fans at the beginning of the year, hey, Vancouver would get off to this crazy start, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, and Quinn Hughes would all be tied for first in the NHL in points at some point in November, and the team will go through a little bit of a lull afterwards. You have a Dakota Joshua injury tossed in there, Thatcher Demko gets hurt, but for the most part, they're still good enough to make the playoffs as the number 1 seed in the West. If you had told any Canucks fan that, back in October, they would have been ecstatic, especially after the dog-awful preseason the team had. I know, preseason hockey doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things, but a lot of us here on the West Coast were panicking after that preseason went down because, hey, they can't win any games. That's not really ideal, but of course, we saw in the first few games of the season after they started to dominate against Edmonton, etc., etc. But still, when it comes to the Canucks, they're now first in the West and first in the Pacific by a long shot, so they're going to make the dance. My question is, though, what are the desired outcomes? Because when you take a look at the wild card, let's just assume the Vancouver Canucks make the playoffs with the first seed. Let's say that Edmonton does not go out there and get their 10-5-1 record to get to 107 points, and the Canucks overperform. They play above 500 and they supersede 107. Let's say Vancouver is number 1 in the Pacific, maybe number 1 in the West too. Who is it that y'all want to face? Because right now, the LA Kings have 81 points, but the Vegas Golden Knights are just 2 points behind them. The race is close enough where the winner of this matchup will probably be the 3rd seed in the Pacific and probably face Edmonton, and the loser will have to fight it out with Minnesota, St. Louis, and debatably Calgary for the last wild card. I say it like that because Nashville is pretty much guaranteed to be a wildcard team right now. I mean, their 84 points would be 3rd in the Pacific, but it's currently 4th in the Central because that Central division is just so good. Winnipeg, Colorado, and Dallas, 1, 2, 3. Pretty strong division over there. So the Predators will probably get themselves the first wild card. Vancouver may have to face off against the second wild card. Who do we want that to be? LA, Vegas, St. Louis, Minnesota? I'll tell you this, when it comes to my perspective, I'd say that the LA Kings might be the easiest one to beat out of this group, just because they've been so wishy-washy the past little while, and they had that terrible stretch in the middle of the year. That shows vulnerability. The Vegas Golden Knights, sure, they've been losing a lot of games lately, but who knows what's going to happen when Mark Stone returns in Game 1 of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. That team seems to always find a way to get the best roster on the ice as possible every single year. Meanwhile, for Minnesota, I feel like there's still some trauma there from the 10-7 blown lead triple hat-trick game the other week, and I don't know, it'd be nice to get revenge. It'd be nice for Casey DeSmith to get revenge, because I think he actually did have a shutout against Minnesota earlier this year. But other than that, the most recent game was that terrible stomping. I mean, there also is the angle that says, hey, the Canucks eliminated the Wild in the play-in series in 2020, and that was a pretty solid series too, Chris Tanev getting the series-clinching goal. And then there are the underdogs, like the St. Louis Blues could very well be in there. The Calgary Flames, if they start winning, they could squeak in, but it's not really likely. For St. Louis, I mean, it's always nice to go up against Jordan Binnington, but at the same time, I don't really know if they're going to be able to make it. So at the end of the day, I think it really boils down to LA, Vegas, or maybe Minnesota. That could be Vancouver's top target in the playoffs if they end up holding on to that first spot in the West. However, if one of those central teams ends up catching up and overtakes Vancouver and the Canucks slide down to number 2 in the West and they get the first wild card instead, then a matchup against Nashville, oh boy, that's going to be tough. The Canucks have a winning record against the Predators this season, but the Preds have been so good as of late. They've gotten points in 16 straight games, something nuts like that. This team has found a way to just put together results night in, night out. Beating teams like Winnipeg pretty convincingly, stomping on teams like the San Jose Sharks, and then losing in overtime to teams like Montreal and Minnesota. This is a team that's been so well put together, and with Philip Forsberg and Gustav Nyquist just doing amazing things, there's really no going wrong with the Predators at this stage of the year. So for my money, the Vancouver Canucks probably have it in their best interests to hold on to that top spot in the West and not let Winnipeg catch up. Sure, we know they can beat Winnipeg, but still, it's all dependent on what happens elsewhere, right? And of course, the biggest question also comes into the form as to whether or not the Canucks can actually win. Because as we've been seeing, Nashville, very good lately. Vegas, very bad lately. Edmonton, stomping lately. Colorado, same thing. The Vancouver Canucks are 6-2-2 in their last 10, and they've been pretty inconsistent the past little while. It hasn't been great. I will say, a lot of this doesn't have to do with the fact that the team is bad. But when it comes to how the team performs, we know that for the past few games or so, they haven't really been performing up to their standard. Even last game, yesterday against Buffalo, sure, they won the game. 3-2, regulation win. You don't like to see the Sabres get any points there. But the Canucks, for as well as they played and for as much as they dominated the deserve-to-win-o-meter, they just could not beat a hot goaltender like Devin Levi. That game-winning goal was an empty netter. So for the Canucks, while it's great to see that they can play well, we need a little bit more consistency in terms of taking it from game to game to game, as well as consistency throughout the game. Because in the games against Colorado, against Washington, they started off well, they had these leads, and then they blew it, and they weren't able to come back, and they showed things off well at the end of the game, but they still were not able to convert. They haven't had that X factor to close out games like they had at the beginning of the year. They haven't had that X factor to continually pile on goals like they were at the beginning of the year. 8-goal games, 7-goal games, 10 goals against San Jose. Canucks have been scoring less and less as the year has gone on, which is not, surprising. It's a long season. These guys get tired. They need rest. They're more fatigued now than they were in October. I get it. But with other teams going out there and still finding ways to win, you kind of have to question the Vancouver Canucks' intensity in that respect, and you just gotta hope that Rick Tocchet can inspire the best for this squad heading into the 2024 playoffs, because they're gonna make it. They're not gonna lose out on this. Hopefully. But at the end of the day, let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. For the Vancouver Canucks, what is the deal now? They have themselves a schedule rounding out against only Western teams after the Montreal Canadiens game on Thursday. So the rest of these points, they're pretty valuable here. We'll see if the Canucks are able to hold on. If they go 500, they have a pretty sizable lead on Edmonton. They'll probably get that first overall spot in the Pacific. Whether or not that's good enough for first in the West, that will remain to be seen. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the Vancouver Canucks and who you want to play off against in the first round. Who's the most preferable opponent? And based off of how the team's been playing lately, how well do you think they're going to perform in the playoffs? Do you think Rick Tocchet has it in him to bring the best out of these guys once again to start out the postseason? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.